All right, so let's talk about the eye. What the eye does is the eye detects light waves via sensory receptors called photoreceptors. And when this photo information reaches the brain, it produces vision. So vision is our most dominant sense. About 70% of all sensory receptors in the body are located in the eyes, and nearly half of the cerebral cortex is involved in some aspect of visual processing. So I want to show you now kind of the overview of how the eye processes light. So as light passes from the air into the eye, it moves sequentially through the following structures. The first thing that it goes through is a structure called the cornea. Then it goes through a fluid called the aqueous humor. Then it passes through the hole in the eye called the iris. And then the next step is the lens. After the lens, the light passes into another aqueous compartment, or through another aqueous fluid called the vitreous humor. And then finally, it hits the retina in the back of the eye. And the retina is where the photoreceptors are located. So this is the retina right here, and specifically what happens with light is it passes through the entire neural layer of the retina to excite the photoreceptors that are in the back of it. So these are the photoreceptors that are in the back of the eye that are detecting this light information. So again, that light comes through the entire retina and it excites the photoreceptors in the back. And these photoreceptors can be either rods or cones. And what these photoreceptors do is they convert light information to electrical energy. And then they send this information backwards, I guess you can say, through these other types of neurons, through additional neurons, and eventually these neurons, so now we're looking over here, it excites the photoreceptors right there, and then that electrical information passes back through these other neurons, and eventually that information, that electrical information leaves the eye as the optic nerve. And there's a structure in the back. There's a structure at the back of the eye. That cream-colored film is the retina. And there's a structure called the optic disc. You can see it right there. And the optic disc is the point where these neuron cells, right there, leave the eye. So it's where these neuron cells go like so, and they leave the back of the eye. And so, as you notice, there's a lack of photoreceptors in this location. And so this corresponds to our blind spot in our eye. You can read about these guys. So like I mentioned earlier, there's both photoreceptors are both rods and cones. So rods respond to very dim light. They contain a single kind of visual pigment, and so their inputs are only received in gray tones. And then cones need bright light for activation, and these are what give us color. Okay, this is what allow us to view color in the world. Back to that optic nerve though. So here's the retina, the back of the eye, and what the optic nerve does is it brings that information toward the brain for processing. And the specific area in the brain that this is involved in is the occipital lobe. This is where integration is going to occur. So the optic nerves leave the eye, and then they cross in this structure right there called the optic chiasma, this cross. And then what happens is these same neurons, at this point, they form a different structure called the optic tract. The optic tract synapses in the thalamus, and then the thalamus sends that information to the appropriate location in the cerebral cortex, which is back here in the occipital lobe. This is just some fun comparative anatomy here. This is for a hammerhead shark. And here's the eye, and you can see that they have a big old long optic nerve that takes that information to the brain for processing. All right. So the eyes are encased within bony cavities in the skulls called the orbits, and they're surrounded and cushioned by fatty tissue. And you can see that. You can see that in here. So here's the fatty tissue within the eye that's supporting and protecting the eye. Also in the orbit, we have extrinsic eye muscles. These are skeletal muscles that control eye movement. And also in the orbit, we have the lacrimal glands, which produce a saline solution we call tears, and that washes across the front of the eye and then cleanses the eye before it's drained in the lacrimal sac there. Okay, so let's get down to the composition of the eyeball here. The eyeball is composed of 3 layers. We have a tough outer fibrous area, and this tough outer fibrous area is composed of the sclera and the cornea. So there's the sclera, and what happens is the sclera moves anteriorly, it becomes the cornea. But both of these are part of that outer fibrous layer. And this is a picture of those. This is that outer layer. This is the cornea. The cornea is known as the white of the eye. So that's the white of the eye. And then as it moves anteriorly, it becomes, So we have the sclera here, and the sclera is the white of the eye. And then as it moves anteriorly, it becomes transparent. It becomes the dome-shaped cornea. So that's what we're looking at here. This is the dome-shaped cornea. It's transparent. And the other part is the sclera right there, the white of the eye. So you have the white of the eye, and then it becomes the cornea, which is the transparent part. The middle layer is what's called the vascular layer. And we have, these are all different parts of the middle layer here. So let's take a look at it though. We have something called the choroid. This entire area is the choroid. Then we have something called the ciliary body. And then we have something called the iris. That's the iris there. That's the iris there. And then we have something called the pupil. So first of all, the choroid is a dark brown membrane that's rich in blood vessels, and the blood vessels are going to nourish all the eye layers. So there's the choroid right there. Then we have the ciliary body, and this is the ciliary body right there and right there, and we can see it on this diagram there. This is both the ciliary bodies. And what the ciliary bodies do is they consist of smooth muscles, and then they connect to the lens via these ligaments. So here we have the ciliary body, which connects to the lens via these ligaments. And what that allows for is when this smooth muscle contracts and relaxes, it pulls on or relaxes on the ligaments, and that changes the shape in the lens, and that allows us to accommodate vision. It accommodates vision because of it. Okay, then we have the iris. The iris is also made up of smooth muscle, and this is the visible colored portion of the eye. So here's the iris right there. This is what we're seeing right there, that green area. And this is the iris right there. And then it has a round opening in it, and that's the pupil. So there's the pupil. There's the pupil, and there's the pupil. And the pupil allows light to enter the eye. And this just shows how these ciliary muscles change lens shape to accommodate near and far vision. This is for distant vision. This is for close vision. Now the iris is really interesting. The iris is made up of two smooth muscle layers, and what happens is when these muscle layers contract, they control pupil size. So there's an outer layer of smooth muscle right there, and then there's an inner layer of smooth muscle right there. And when we're sitting on the couch eating the meal, and that activates the parasympathetic system, and when we're sitting on the couch, we don't need a lot of light to enter the eye. We just need to see the food in front of our face. So what happens is this inner layer, smooth muscle layer, contracts, and what that does is it decreases pupil size. So not as much light is entering the eye, which is fine in the rest and digest situation. Now that's right there. Now in the sympathetic situation, the fight or flight, we want a lot of light to enter the eye so we can see long distances. And what happens in that case is the outer smooth muscle layer contracts, and that increases pupil size. So we can see most of it here. Here's the cornea, or the sclera, or the white of the eye. We have the transparent cornea around like so, which you can't see in this case. But what you can see is the iris, and you can also see the pupil. Okay, and then lastly, the inner layer is the delicate retina, which is made up of millions of photoreceptors that are going to convert light to electrical energy. So this is the inner layer right there. That's the retina. And it's what we're looking at right there. And, the retina can become detached, in which case, it causes obvious problems because of it. All right, then we have the lens. So here we have the lens. We haven't talked about that yet. What the lens does, the lens is an adjustable focusing apparatus of the eye. And what it does is it changes shape to precisely focus light on the retina back here. And cataracts is a clouding of the lenses. This is just kind of fun. You can compare kind of some of the different features of a camera with those associated features in the eye. So what the lens also does is the lens right there divides the eye into what are called anterior segments and posterior segments. The anterior segment is filled with a fluid called aqueous humor, okay? And then the posterior segment behind the lens is filled with a jelly-like substance called the vitreous humor. And this vitreous humor is really important. It helps transmit light, and it holds the retina firmly in place against the back of the eye, and it also contributes to intraocular pressure. So that's what we're looking at right here. This jelly-like substance is vitreous humor that fits in this posterior segment of the eye. There's a lot of really cool medical breakthroughs coming through with regards to ending blindness, different types of blindness. Some cool pictures with that. You can read this. This is about nearsightedness and nearsightedness and farsightedness and what that entails. Okay, and then in the lab, we're going to dissect a cow eyeball, and this is what the cow eyeball looks like when we first get it. Okay, there's a lot of connective tissue around it, there's a lot of fat, and there's also these extrinsic skeletal muscles that you have to identify. So you're going to identify all those features, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take a scalpel and you're going to make an incision around the sclera. And then what you can do is you can take that cap and pop it off. And that's what we're looking at here. You take that cap, pop it off that way like so. So anyways, yeah, you take that off, turn it upside down, and this is what it looks like. You'll see the lens there, you'll see the pupil, as well as the ciliary body and all that kind of stuff. And then on the back of the eye, you can see the retina. This film right there is the retina. And that's what I did right here. So I cut off the sclera and removed it from the eye, and then took out that material right there. So that's the vitreous humor, and then you can see the lens right there. And this film on the back is the retina. Okay.